Okay. Adam, we appreciate that. What do you got, Adam? What's on your mind?
I find topics number 1 and 3 quite interesting.
Sure.
So,
shall we hit number 1, because it actually plays into 3. So if we can hit number 1 and reach some kind of understanding of each other's position on there, then that might inform how we talk about 3.
yeah. Well, I believe that we indirectly choose our beliefs, but I'm interested if you have an argument for the idea that we don't.
I do have an argument for the idea that we don't. I have a whole book full of them. So I might nearly agree with you when you say we indirectly choose our beliefs, but I would use different language. And here's where I'd be interested to see if you meet me where I am. So I think we can take actions, and we can choose courses of action that potentially can end up causing us to to believe certain things, causing us to become convinced of certain things. But that's about as close as you can get. So an example of that would be, I could decide to start going to a Christian fellowship group and a Bible study group, and start, reading into Christianity and attending prayer meetings and going to Holy Spirit weekends and doing all of those kind of activities and hanging out with people from a particular church, or it doesn't have to be Christianity, any religious system. And my decision to do those things might launch me on a path which leads to me ending up with those beliefs. But ultimately, I didn't choose the beliefs, either directly or indirectly. I just chose a course of action which ended up happening to cause those beliefs to take place, because I ended up becoming convinced of something along the way. And it was that process of becoming convinced of something which is actually the proximate cause of the belief. But choosing those actions doesn't guarantee that I would have been convinced of that thing. So that's why I say it's not an indirect choice. It's just choosing a course of action which potentiates the belief. It just creates the conditions where that belief may happen. But whether it happens or not is outside of my control entirely. What do you think?
Well, I disagree that our belief requires some kind of causal intermediary. So you're saying that we genuinely choose our actions, and those actions are needed to be the bridge between choice and belief.
Not quite. Yeah, let me just clarify. I wasn't saying that our beliefs require a causal intermediary. I was saying that sometimes there is a causal intermediary which we may have chosen. Often there is none. So, for example, I could go and sit in a cave and just think about stuff. And it could be that in the process of thinking about stuff, I become convinced of the truth of Scientology, for example. Thinking about it really hard. Remembering that L. Ron Hubbard book I bought, and remembering what the guy said to me when he made me hold the silly things and all of that. And through that process of just thinking about it, I become convinced of something. Well, there was no causal intermediary there in the middle. It was just my thinking. But even in that situation, I still haven't chosen the belief. I've just become persuaded by an idea. And that process of persuasion is what belief is. It's not that it causes the belief. The process of persuasion is the belief.
All right, so just to get clear on the example that you gave, where beliefs do cause, where choices do cause beliefs, you're saying that the choice to go to the Christian group, that's a genuine choice. It doesn't begin with a prior belief. It doesn't begin with any prior mental content.
It might, or it might not. It doesn't matter. For the purposes of how we think about it here, arguably every experience you have is connected to some prior, right? So I'm not explicitly separating it from that, but it works either way. You could say that the choice to go and join the Christian group is connected to your priors or isn't connected to your priors. It's still the case that you didn't choose. If you ended up becoming convinced that Christ died for your sins, you never chose that belief. You just chose a course of action that allowed that belief to take hold.
Okay. All right. So, well, I'd say that there are certain beliefs that we can choose indirectly, because...
Such as?
Well, you can choose, for example, to be irrational in accordance with some goal. And if you're irrational, then you can end up believing something for just no reason.
Right, but choosing to. So if you're saying you can choose to be irrational, if you choose to be irrational, what does that actually mean? We need to distinguish between choosing to say irrational things, right, and choosing to willfully disregard kind of reason and rational arguments. Well, if we're talking about choosing to say irrational things, well, the action of saying things has got nothing to do with belief, right? We could discard that. How can you, if you choose to be irrational, let's say you decide now to choose to be irrational, and so, right, you're going to enter irrational mode, and now that you're in irrational mode, I'm going to ask you to start believing that you're a sandwich. Can you do it just because you're in irrational mode?
Well, the example that you're using, choosing to be a sandwich, doesn't fit any goal that I might have. So what I'm saying is that the chain of mental content that begins with choice, the item of mental content which is chosen is your goal. So believing that I'm a sandwich isn't going to be a part of any of my goals, but there are goals.
So change the example to something which is a goal then, and we'll examine that. You can pick it.
Yeah, so my goal might just be to think that I'm better than other people.
Okay, so your goal is to think you're better than other people, and then your brain, whether you've decided to be rational or irrational, doesn't matter. Your brain is either going to become convinced that you are better than other people, or it isn't.
It's going to search that my rationality that is used to reach that goal is going to search for things that are either there or not there. So I'm going to end up believing things that either there might be rational reasons to think I'm better than other people in certain examples, but in most cases it's going to be irrational.
Yeah. So I would re-describe that as you may be of a certain mind where you have such a motivation to think that you're better than other people, and we can be motivated to believe things. I completely agree with that. So you might think, I really want to think that I'm better than other people. I currently don't believe that I'm better than other people, because if you did, it wouldn't be aspirational, it would be present. I don't think I'm better than other people right now, but I want to think that I'm better than other people. So I'm going to start trying to make myself think that I'm better than other people. And then you're either going to succeed in talking yourself into that, in which case your brain reasoned that you are, and you became persuaded that you are, and the belief followed inevitably, or you're going to try to think you're better than other people, but your brain isn't going to arrive at that as a conclusion that it accepts as true, and you'll be unable to believe it. You'll be able to say it, but you won't be able to actually think it's really true. It would be insincere if you did. Those are the only two conditions. Those are the only two possible outcomes, and neither one involves choosing the belief. You're either persuaded or you're not. I mean, all of therapy, right, is based on trying to change your beliefs about yourself. Say someone goes to therapy with really low self-esteem. This is similar to your example, but a little different. You go to a therapist with low self-esteem. You currently hold the view that you're unworthy, that you're not worthy of love, or that you're, not a valuable person. It's the goal of the therapist to help you, to partner with you, and collaborate with you in a process of thought and contemplation that results in your belief about yourself changing. So you have the motivation, and you have someone there to guide you along the way, but the only outcomes are the process will succeed in convincing you of that and your beliefs will change, or the damage is so deep that the process will fail because no matter what words the therapist says, no matter what avenues of contemplation they guide you down, that schema of you not being worthy is unbudgeable, and you just can't get there.
Yeah, but I agree with that.
In either of those cases, there's no choice made anywhere.
Well, no, I disagree. So the second half of that would be an example of indirect choice of belief, right? Because the person was unresponsive to reason. So they were shown every good reason to change their belief, but they didn't. So that's an example of deliberately ignoring the evidence that's presented. as you said, the damage is so deep. Okay, so they've got some goal to cling. They've got some attachment to some view of themselves, and they're disregarding good reasons to change their beliefs, and they're holding.
But I hear what you're saying, but it's too simple, I'm afraid, because we have two different types of denial, right? Would you agree it's kind of a type of denial where you're presented with irrefutable evidence of something and yet you still hold on to the contrary view?
Yeah, you're choosing.
Well, you're not choosing. So here's the thing, right? In a case of denial, there are basically two types of denial. And I write about them in my book. So there's behavioral denial and cognitive denial. So behavioral denial, no, I'm going to go the other one first. So cognitive denial means that your emotional reasons for holding on to a thought or a belief are so ingrained, they're so deep in who you are, that even though the evidence may look undeniable to other people, it doesn't look undeniable to you, and it's not sufficient to persuade you of the truth of the thing that the person's trying to
because of the goals that you chose.
Right. Either because of goals that you chose, or because of just that's how it is. An example would be, I use this example often, a parent confronted with news that their child is bullying other kids, and they just can't believe it, because little Timmy's such a nice boy, and I raised him well, and I just can't believe this is true. So in a situation like that, there could be such a deep emotional resistance to that thing being true, that they're literally not convinced that it's true, even if they've heard 5 accounts from 5 different parents and all of that, even if to everyone else it's obviously true, or someone's in a toxic relationship with someone who's abusing them. Everyone can see it apart from them. We all know someone who's been in that situation. That person isn't lying. That person isn't in a situation where they know it's true, but they're just saying it's not. Well, they might be. That's the next kind of denial. But a lot of the time, we know that a lot of the way our brains evaluate belief is tied up with our emotions. In fact, more of it is tied up with our emotions than is tied up with logic and reason. And so it explains how someone in therapy could. It's not that they're choosing not to accept the conclusion from the therapist that actually you are worthy of love, and you are a good person and an okay person and good enough. It's not that they're choosing not to.
Right, it's an indirect choice.
They just can't. It isn't a choice at all. Their brains cannot evaluate that proposition as true. They try and they fail. They cannot do it. There's no choice. Choice entails that you could have done the opposite if you wanted to. They can't do it. They might want to, and they just can't.
But
the other type of.
May I?
I'll just land this and then come back in. The other type of denial, just so I can finish the point and not leave it hanging. The other type of denial is behavioural denial, where someone knows something is true, but they just won't say it. Right? That's the more obvious kind. That's when someone they absolutely know what's going on, they just can't bring themselves to say it or admit it or act outwardly as if it's true. So there's a divergence between their internal state, their internal perception of how things are, and what they do outwardly, what they say and how they behave. And those two types of denial account for all denial you'll ever see. Whenever you see someone in denial, check it out. It's one of those two, always, 100% of the time. And in both of those states, no choices were made about belief. Choices were made about actions in the case of the behavioural denial. But in the case of the cognitive denial, there's no choice being made there.
Well, the way that you described it to me sounded like it was agreeing that there are indirectly chosen things, because the examples that you gave kind of agree with other experiences that we have, where you have a view about yourself, and when you sort of grow or mature out of that view, you stop holding other beliefs. So it's clear that, so you can be hostile towards another group of people or something, or you can have a very damaging view of yourself or something. As you mature out of those beliefs, out of that view, should I say, you end up giving up the supporting reasoning for the beliefs. So it's clear that there's like a hierarchy of mental processes that begins with the way that you view someone or yourself, and to support the view, you recruit reasoning, or the evidence, and then at the end of that you've got the belief itself. The belief has some kind of proposition or something. And the example that you gave sounded like it was in agreement with that. Where you talked about you said something about a school, where parents are complaining.
A parent having to confront the possibility that their child is hurting other kids.
Yeah, so they're protecting their view of themselves and the kids, and this is the reasoning.
So it's still the case that even if you have a goal to hold someone in a particular light or view or think about someone in a certain way, you can only do it if your mind accepts it. You can't choose whether your mind does. You can try, you can want to think about things a certain way, but your mind will only allow you to believe what your mind passes, P-A-R-S, passes as convincing. And you can't choose what your mind passes as convincing. That evaluation is done outside of your control. So even if you might have had a vested interest a priori for things to be a certain way, you're either going to succeed or fail in that based on what your mind determines to be convincing. And that's the one part of the process you can't choose or control. So I still think that, I still stand by my guns here, that I would still say that you can influence what's likely to happen, but that's as much as you can do. And you can do that by, you can be very deliberate in being open-minded. You can be very deliberate in not being open-minded. Or you can say, I really, really, really want this to be true, so I'm going to try
deliberate,
as hard as I can to get...
May I...
Yeah, you can.
When you say deliberate, that means that you're the true first cause of the consideration, right? You're the true decider.
You can. You can absolutely decide on an orientation. Let's say an orientation towards an idea. You can decide on that, but you can't decide on, having done that, whether your brain evaluates it as true or not. That's the one bit you can't choose. So I think our positions are quite close. That's why I said at the beginning we'll sort of see if we end up in the same place. And I think we're nearly in the same place. I don't think we're a million miles apart, because I am conceding to you that there's room for choice in the process.
Okay, excellent.
But the way I look at it, I have this metaphor in my head, which is driving a car towards an enormous patch of ice. Imagine a huge patch of ice, like the size of a huge lake, right? And you're driving a car towards the patch of ice. You can determine the direction of travel of the car, so you can determine the angle that you're going to hit the ice at, and you can determine the speed of the car. But as your car hits the ice, in the moment of hitting the ice, so the analogy here is that deciding where to point the car on the ice and how fast to drive is you deciding how to approach a belief or an idea, right? You can choose the direction. Where am I going to approach it from? From a position of skepticism on this side, or open-minded acceptance on this side, or hostile antagonism over here, or hopeful reaching over here, whatever it is. You can decide the kind of vector of approach, and you can decide the speed, which is equivalent to, in this instance, like how badly you want it, or how interested you are, or how the enthusiasm you have with it, or how much energy you're willing to put into it. Am I going to just read a blog post about it, or am I going to go to the library and get 10 books about it and read all of those? That's kind of the speed of the car, right? The intensity of it. So you're choosing the vector of approach to the ice, and you're choosing the speed you're driving the car. That's where your choices live. The moment you hit the ice, you're not in control anymore. You can pump the brakes, it doesn't matter. You hit the ice at 50, putting the brakes on isn't going to make a difference, because it's just the car's momentum on the ice now which is making the car move. You can steer, not going to make a difference. You set the course, and now you're just up to see where the car goes. You're not in control of the process anymore. And that's how I look at the formation of beliefs. So you can control all the bits up until the point at which your brain starts to evaluate whether it's true or not, and that's the car being on the ice. You just can't do anything about that bit.
Yeah, so I would say that the direction of the car before it hits the ice is an analogy for the fact that we choose a set of values that we wish to aspire to. We choose that
Yeah.
we choose that our image of ourselves that we want to kind of make real. And then
Yeah.
we recruit the kind of reasoning that then supports that, and that can lead us in a bad direction if we start to deny truth because we have an intense attachment to something that's bad in us or something that's bad in someone that we love.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree with you on all of that.
Okay,
I
good.
agree with you. That's why I say I think we're really close to each other. I just think even accounting for all of that, I just suspect we may be inches apart, and it's just a semantic argument because what you're calling indirect choice, I'm just calling the choices you take beforehand that influence the outcome. So we're very, very close to each other.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So how does this play then into point 3? That hell is ridiculous. So, can I ask you, Adam, are you a religious believer?
Yeah, I'm a member of the Catholic Church.